Hi, Jeff. Welcome to the discussion today. I'm so glad that you could make time for us. Hi, everyone. This is Aashima Gupta. I'm founder of Sourcing Acumen, which is an AI native procurement platform. And today I'm joined by Jeff Dean. He is coming from Next Level Purchasing Association, NLPA, and JP Dean Consulting. So we are going to talk about a very exciting topic. Given as software is getting smarter and there's a lot of AI adoption happening. So, what's the skill set that people should be developing in the near future, or how do you see procurement trainings are evolving? So, would love to hear your perspective, Jeff. You have worked a lot on procurement transformations, and you do day in day out training of procurement professionals. So, would love to see that. What are your thoughts? What are you seeing in the near future happening?
Yeah, thanks, Aashima. I appreciate it. I think it's a timely topic because procurement teams are seeing a very rapid change in technology, especially around things like artificial intelligence, AI, automation, guided workflows. There's a lot of change, and it really raises an important question, which is if the tools are changing, how should the profession itself evolve? And I think that's more than just procurement, but that's the question we need to ask ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I totally agree with you. Even in, traditionally when we were doing trainings, there was a lot of focus on the execution side of it, like how to do the spend analysis and how to do the RFQs or how to analyze them, and a lot around like negotiation workshops, right? And I'm sure a lot of that is still valid, but it's evolving. Not only you need to have fundamental skills, but you also need to have kind of like technology skills. So I mean, what do you see at NLPA, or like when you talk to clients, what they're asking for these days?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I can highlight a few. First, I think what we would call commercial judgment, which is professionals really have a need to get stronger at understanding the trade-offs, right? So not just price, but total value, and price and value are different things. Supplier capability, risk, service, long-term business impact. So from a procurement team perspective, there's a lot of things to consider when you're doing that. The second item I'd say is stakeholder alignment and communication is obviously critical. The ability to ask better questions, frame sourcing decisions clearly, influence internal stakeholders is huge. And it becomes even more important when the expectation is that procurement is adding strategic value. That's a huge thing, is that internal piece. And then third, I would say supplier evaluation and negotiation. So even if the software is helping the organization organize information better, professionals still need to know how to interpret that information. So challenge assumptions, engage suppliers effectively. Like, depending on your industry, there are a lot of nuances in there. And then fourth and last, I'd say critical thinking with technology. So just because a platform gives recommendations or makes work easier does not mean the human role disappears. We call it human in the loop on the AI side. Professionals need to know how to work with better tools without becoming a passive user. So just kind of that rubber stamp. The AI says this, I'm going to do this, right?
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. Like, at Sourcing Acumen also we see that it's not only about, when you are doing sourcing, you are doing RFQs. So it's not only about that, can I do the RFQs faster? It's also about how you make a better decision, because we retain kind of like, sourcing memory of how suppliers are performing in the past. So to make your better decisions for the future RFQs, should you even be doing those RFQs at all, right? So it's all about like, how do you improve your decision quality with all of the intelligence available in the system? Not only about the work I was doing in 12 weeks, can I do in 8 or 10 weeks now?
Agreed.
Yeah. The other question I think like you might be hearing as well, with the agentic AI coming in, and there's a lot of technology available where people can actually build some of these AI agents themselves, right? So what you are hearing, like, do I need to start building my capability so that I can design these AI agents myself, though I'm a procurement professional, or I could be just robust on my fundamental skills and it will still take me forward?
Yeah, I think for most procurement professionals, the answer is no. They don't really need to become builders in the technical sense. I think because there's so many changes going on in procurement, as it is, but they don't need to learn how to code agents or architect systems or design full automation logic from scratch. But what they do need to understand is a few things, much better than they needed to understand before, which would be things like, a big one is, what problem should be solved with AI versus what still needs human judgment. That's going to be a huge piece.
Basic, yeah.
What does that define? How does that look? You need to know that obviously in advance. And then, very important, how to define a workflow clearly. Do you have a workflow in place and is it mapped? If not, that's where you start, because you can't really change a system that you don't have mapped. It's not super effective to, at least. How to structure inputs so systems can work effectively. So what is the input into the system? How is it set up? Who is doing it or what is doing it? Is it a person? Is it a system? How to validate the output of those systems. What does that data look like? Is it clean? Is it agreed upon? Does it match? Is it pulling from the source of truth? And then how to use AI support. This is going to be critical over the next few years without becoming overly dependent on it. So as certain companies are shrinking their team size, their FTEs, their full-time employees, and adopting AI, we have to be very careful that we're not going to have it so it's kind of back to that rubber stamp thing we talked about earlier, that it's just things come through and people just say okay to it. So I would say the future skill is not necessarily building agents. I think enough about procurement work is that smarter systems can actually be used well, right? That means strong process understanding. You're going to hear me say this a million times. Process always comes before technology. Strong business context, strong decision making still matter enormously with artificial intelligence or any other system. In fact, if AI agents, as they're becoming more common, those human capabilities become even more important, because somebody still has to decide what's going to be automated, what should be reviewed, what are the risks, how do those risks matter, when the recommendation is wrong, because all of us have used these LLMs and things and said, hey, here's a situation, and the LLM gives an answer and you're saying, no, not necessarily, that's the way I want to go in my business. So that's my standpoint.
I think that there will be an element of people learning AI agents in the near future, because it's kind of relatively easy now to build the agents than before, right? But the fundamentals don't go away. If you don't have a clarity on the workflow, then I totally agree with you. Like, it's not going to work, whatever you build, right? So I think it's going to be a blend of the role, but not as much tech. There will be an element of tech from my perspective. Let's see, where it goes. Nice. So last question, Jeff, for you. Like, for procurement leaders who are watching this, what's your one practical advice or takeaway that what kind of skill set they should be building in their team, or how they should be guiding their team going forward?
Okay. So I wouldn't start with asking which team members should learn to build AI agents. I'd start by asking can your team clearly define the work well enough for smarter systems to support it. So in my head, you have to pave the way for artificial intelligence, because once artificial intelligence is in there, your process is going to change. So knowing that, have those process maps, understanding how those systems support it is really, really critical. Can they clearly articulate what is the workflow? Where are the decision points? what data matters, what exceptions matter, and where human judgment needs to be involved.
Yeah.
Those are going to be big things. If that clarity is missing and you put a smarter tool or an AI agent, it's not going to create the value leaders expect. And that's why we see such a high failure rate inside the artificial intelligence community, inside projects, in procurement and other places. So what I would do with teams today is I'd focus probably in 3 areas. Number 1, strengthen your workflow understanding. Help people think more clearly what procurement does, how they do it, not just in theory, but in practice. I would strengthen your judgment for the second point, which would be teams need to know how to interpret recommendations, challenge inputs, and make sound business decisions, which some procurement teams, that's a new world for them. So understanding those internal changes and what they look like for your procurement and your other teams that deal with procurement. And then third, identify where AI can remove friction, but without removing accountability. You're kind of looking for that sweet spot of this makes us more efficient, but it doesn't make us less effective strategically. So to me, the practical move is not to teach everyone to build AI. It's build a team that can work effectively in an AI-enabled procurement environment.
No, that's a great perspective. And I do, align with that, given we see the similar things. Like one thing is that you have AI, but the second thing is also how do you use it effectively to make better decisions going forward, right?
Yes.
That's a really
Absolutely.
great discussion, Jeff. Thank you so much for joining and sharing your perspective.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. I appreciate it.